Japan is an island country situated off the eastern seaboard of the Eurasian continent in the northern hemisphere. It is an archipelago nation comprised of four main islands and over 3,500 smaller islands. It has a surface area of 377,915 square kilometers. No one lives further than 70 miles from the coast, so Japanese are oriented to the sea even though their land is mountainous. Nearly all people live on several flat coastal plains where it has been possible to farm. Japan's total population in 2021 was 125.5 million. The country has a slowly shrinking population and the proportion of the older people is rising. Shinto is the traditional religion of Japan. While not everybody in Japan practices Shinto, it is deeply engraved in their customs and culture. Buddhism is the other main religion in Japan. Japan is renowned worldwide as a nation steeped in a culture that combines both tradition and modernity. As a connection with other countries grew, Japanese tradition was influenced and altered to create the unique culture of modern Japan, evident in its combination of traditional concepts with the latest technology and art that astound the rest of the world. Japanese culture is often stereotyped as homogeneous, although there are multiple aspects of Japanese culture and society that are diverse. Many take pride in their place of birth and the regional differences throughout Japan. Nonetheless, common themes found throughout Japanese culture include a sense of identity based on social groups and the place of birth, a polite and humble style of communication, a pragmatic approach to situations and challenges, as well as appreciation and enjoyment of artistic activities and forms of entertainment. Japan is seen as shopper's paradise. Markets have handmade trinkets and souvenirs as well as clothes, shoes, and accessories. There are also huge malls with mix of international brands and Japanese brands. Japan performs well across several well-being dimensions relative to other countries in the Better Life Index. Japan outperforms the average in education, safety, and environmental quality. It underperforms average in income, social connection, civic engagement, and life satisfaction. Japan has a civil law legal system with six legal codes. The Japanese constitution enacted after World War II is the supreme law in Japan. An independent judge has the power to review laws and government acts for constitutionality.
Every country has a different set of values, beliefs, rules, and institutions that they have embraced since decades. It is a common value that is usually shared by a group of people. Cross-cultural risk is a situation where a cultural miscommunication puts some human value at stake. Therefore, in order to avoid these matters, simplicity needs to acknowledge and understand the cultural differences of Japan in order to minimize the cross-cultural risk to avoid any misleading and to gain more business opportunity in Japan. Communication and language is a core element in intercultural communication as it is a medium of conveying thoughts, feeling, knowledge, and action between two or more people. There are some key issues that should be concerned by simplicity before starting their business at foreign country. First, there are three major languages spoken by people in Japan, which are Nihongo, Ryukyuan, and Okinawan languages. These three languages differ according to the geographic area. Secondly, the issue of similar words but different meanings between languages. For instance, the word fight in English often as a physical exchange of argument. However, Japanese usually pronounce faito, which also interchangeably with gambare that brings the meaning of cheering or inspiring people during a difficult task. Third, Japanese communication style entails a careful consideration of their words before speaking, including the non-verbal communication. For example, the culture of bowing to the other person as a sign of respect, appearance of oral manners, and giving gifts at the end of meeting or event. Hence, it is important for simplicity to recognize and prepare themselves with all the knowledge of Japanese culture to avoid any mislead before starting their business in Japan. Religion is considered as a part of cultural experiences as embedded the value of expressing spirituality that is inward, personal, and unsystematic. According to the government of Japan, 69% of the population practice Shinto, 66.7% practice Buddhism, 1.5% practice Christianity, and 6.2% practice other religion. However, Japanese tend to identify with no religion when asked about religious belief due to various factors, and one of them is because they may not express intense religious feelings or feel strongly connected to their religious identity. There are some issues that can arise related to religious differences. First, the fear of apprehension of the unknown is a large contributor in creating communication barriers. Simplicity is a Malaysian cosmetic company founded by a Muslim. The product mainly contains halal and Muslim-friendly ingredients. Therefore, Japanese can be unfamiliar with the Islamic terms written in packaging or any promotion that involve hijabis in Japan. They may have vastly different assumptions and ideas regarding the product, such as assuming that the products are exclusively for Muslim only. Thus, before the expansion of business by simplicity, they should work in breaking down the communication barriers by using a family approach in the process of conveying the information to avoid any false judgment by the Japanese community.
Unstable recovery. Since the pandemic remained highly uncertain, Japan has a negative impact on the service consumption and tourism. A tight supply also remained grow in the export and industrial production, especially in the automotive industry. Merchandise export has been the significant driver of the Japan recovery from the pandemic, but they may face the pressure as the supply problem persists and China economy slow. Fixed investment in business will be directly connected to industrial and trade success. In long term, Japan faces the serve structural threat to its long-run economic potential, the most serious of which are negative demographic shift, limited monetary policy flexibility, and the necessity for the fiscal reduction are also important challenges. Slow economic consolidation. The current account surplus is expected to remain in 2022, although slightly narrower, as a projected large positive income balance should be offset a negative trade account. Since the mid-1990s, the growing trend in investment income has helped counterbalance a falling trend in the trade, good and service balance, owing to the increasingly positive net foreign assets position linked to increased corporate saving. A sustained global recovery should underpin Japan investment income inflows. The trade balance is expected to remain the deficit, as the estimated narrowing of services trade shortfall is likely to be balanced by smaller good trade surplus. The gradual pickup in the travel-related services influence on the easing border restriction and modest rebounds in international tourism should improve the services deficits. Meanwhile, the continued improvement in the domestic demand would boost good import, thereby counting on the merchandise trade balance, particularly when export grow. For example, automobile is likely to slow in polar supply chains, disruption, and key material shortages. Factional political constraint policy making. Fumio Kishida, the new prime minister, led to incumbent Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, to victory in the 2021 general election, preserving a single but smaller majority, 56% in the lower house of parliament. The governing party has a 63% majority in the House of the Representatives. However, the loss of the Liberal Democratic Party seat could mean that they may need to show more consideration to Komeito when making policy, especially in expenditure items. This is important ahead of upper house election in summer 2022, where the Liberal Democratic Party only held 45% of the seat and had to depend on Komeito for the majority. Factional politics within the Liberal Democratic Party may limit Kishida's administration capacity to implement ambitious reform, including generational renewal inside the party. In the short term, Kishida will focus on domestic issues, especially anti-pandemic measures and economic recovery. The skillful ability to balance Japan's relationship with China and United States will be a key foreign policy challenges for Kishida. Meanwhile, relationship between Japan and South Korea also will likely remain tense.
The currency and financial issues that lead to currency and financial risk.
One of the basics that need to put into consideration is the corporate tax burden. This corporate tax burden is a mandatory cost that needs to be paid by the company who does business. Along with the corporate tax, the company must pay two types of local taxes, which is first, inhabitant tax and enterprise tax. According to the data, Japan's corporate tax burden is moderately high compared to other East Asian countries. The corporate tax in Japan is at 30.62%. The effective Japanese corporate income tax rate is presently 34.6% for companies with paid-in capital of 100 million Japanese yen or less, or 30.62% for companies with paid-in capital greater than 100 million Japanese yen. Including Japanese brand offices of foreign companies with paid-in capital greater than 100 million Japanese yen and subsidiaries of company with paid-in capital greater than 500 million Japanese yen. All Japanese companies and branch offices must pay a minimum annual inhabitant tax of 70,000 Japanese yen even if they make a loss, while large enterprises must pay a minimum inhabitant tax up to 3.8 million Japanese yen. Managing local taxes can take around 330 hours, require 14 different payments, and can add up to more than 50% of net profits. The tax burden on firms has an impact on growth and investment. Businesses are more likely to avoid a country where taxes are high. Although Simplicity is a well-established company in Malaysia, if they are planning to enter Japan market, they need to put the tax burden into consideration. The second risk is about cost structure. The overall cost structure in Japan is quite high, making the market entry and expansion expensive for foreign investors. There are several initial costs to establish a company in Japan, which include the establishment and tax notices, the paid-in capital, the cost of obtaining visas, the cost for setting up an office, cost of hiring local staff that will be working as a manager with the expected first year salary for a manager in Japan, and lastly, the cost to set up housing for foreign staff. Lastly, the issue of weak currency. The Japanese currency, which is yen, is weak in recent years compared to USD. The impact of a weaker yen will create a risk because it makes imports more expensive. The cost of import will be high, which will add to the price of the product. Then it will be less attractive compared to other products in the Japanese market if Simplicity enters the market.
Next is commercial risk. Commercial risk can be referred as a potential to loss or failure in business strategy performance. The commercial risk doing a business in Japan is complex and highly regulatory framework. For example, in 2014, Japan introduced the Act on Safety Assurance and Advertisement of Cosmetics, which enforced stricter regulations for the cosmetic and skincare industry. These regulations include the control of hazardous substance, labeling requirements, and the mandatory registration of products. Companies who did not comply with the law risk having their product removed from the shelf of Japanese stores. Additionally, in August 2020, Japan passed a new law that regulates fragrance labeling requirements, setting more precise thresholds for the labeling of allergens. These laws are constantly updated and changed, which can be difficult for companies like Simplicity to keep up with. This could lead to significant financial penalties and reputational damage if they fail to comply with the regulation. The second commercial risk that Simplicity may have is from legal issues. Any company operating in Japan must obtain a license and permit while also pass safety assessment from the Japanese Ministry of Health, Labour and Welfare in order to market or sell cosmetic products within the country. The process of obtaining this license and permits can be complex, time-consuming, and costly, and may require significant investment in testing, documentation, and other compliance efforts. The issue must be strictly tested by the Japan government, even though the product is well known in other countries. Lastly, in Japan, it is important to understand the local customs and preference of consumers in order to successfully launch a product. Japanese consumers tend to value high-quality products, and they may be more price-sensitive than consumers in other markets. Marketers will need to create strategic campaigns to effectively communicate the key values of simplicity to the Japanese audience. This may involve conducting market research to understand the preference and purchasing habits of Japanese consumers, as well as adapting the brand's messaging, packaging, and product offering to suit the Japanese market.
In our opinion, we think that it is not suitable time for Simplicity to join Japan market. This is because due to the pandemic, the focus of Japan to boost their company is by focus mostly on automotive, which bring more profit to country. Then, the Japanese market is heavily regulated and a foreign company may find it difficult to comply with local laws and regulations. It is also an expensive and competitive market and may prove costly for Simplicity to enter. Thirdly, the Japanese consumer culture is significantly different from the consumer culture in Malaysia, so Simplicity may find it difficult to target and appeal to potential customers in Japan, which includes the language barriers may also be an issue in terms of marketing messages and customer support.